Morant. His home in Shelby County got hit just after 4 in the afternoon on December 19th, right when the Grizzlies were lighting up Golden State in that blowout win. While fans were hyped about that 93-point win, someone was making off with nearly $1 million in jewelry, luxury bags, and watches from his house. The FBI later identified him as Professional Athlete 6 in a criminal complaint filed on January 30th. Turns out he wasn't alone. The burglary ring had their eyes on a bunch of athletes, including Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Joe Burrow, and others. These guys weren't amateurs either. 7 Chilean men were charged with organizing the whole thing. The FBI said they followed player schedules and social media, waited until everyone was on the road, then hit the homes like a twisted highlight reel. They had burner phones, fake IDs, rental cars, and tools ready to bust into sliding doors and windows. After grabbing the loot, they got sloppy. They took selfies with stolen items and uploaded them to iCloud. The FBI used that, plus surveillance footage and license plate readers to track them down. One got pulled over in Ohio, and the dominoes started falling from there. By late February, the complaint got unsealed, and Morant's involvement became public. He didn't release any statement, but by that point, the damage was already done. The group faces federal charges for conspiracy to transport stolen property across state lines, and that could mean up to 10 years behind bars. This whole thing's a reminder that athlete homes aren't just targets for fans. They're on the radar for organized criminals watching schedules and waiting for game night to strike. Draymond Green. In March of 2025, a huge federal complaint dropped in California, and right in the middle of the mess was Eugene Henley, also known as Big U. This guy's accused of running a mafia-style operation under the front of a nonprofit called Developing Options. According to the complaint, Henley convinced Draymond to donate $20,000 to that nonprofit, claiming it was for youth outreach. But instead of helping kids, the entire sum allegedly ended up in Henley's personal bank account. Draymond's name is in the federal documents as one of the victims. He's not accused of doing anything wrong, just got played like a violin. And apparently, he wasn't alone. Shaquille O'Neal also donated $20,000 to Henley's group, though the complaint says Henley only pocketed most of that money, not all. Henley's hustle didn't stop at donations. The FBI says Developing Options got over $2 million in public funds through LAA's Gang Reduction and Youth Development Program from 2018 to 2023. A witness told the feds that Henley would demand check-in payments from NBA players visiting Los Angeles, basically forcing them to pay for peace of mind at parties and video shoots. He also allegedly charged players up to $100,000 to help them recover millions lost in rigged dice games. One boxer, referred to as AB, supposedly ran these games where some big names got swindled out of around $6.5 million. So yeah, Green's role in this, purely as a donor who got scammed. The feds are clear on that. He handed over $20,000 thinking he was helping kids, but instead he helped fund what the FBI calls a criminal enterprise, masked behind community service. Nate Driggers. He only played 15 games in the NBA, and now he's better known for an 8-year federal sentence tied to stolen firearms. Back in April of 2015, around 111 Ruger handguns were taken from a locked freight train sitting in a Chicago rail yard. Gang members handed off 30 of those stolen guns to Driggers that same day. That little exchange triggered a felony case that blew up in court a couple years later. Driggers got indicted in September of that same year for possession of stolen firearms, which is already a big deal, but worse since he was a convicted felon. In his trial 2 years later, prosecutors pulled out all the stops, cell phone records, recovered weapon, and a witness named Marcel Turner, who helped make the case stick. The jury wasn't buying any excuses and convicted him on one count. By September 14th, 2017, Judge John Tharp handed down a 96-month sentence. Prosecutors had pushed for 10 years, pointing to the damage this kind of trafficking causes in a city already dealing with gun violence. Driggers claimed he didn't sell anything, but the record said otherwise. He bought 30 stolen firearms and flipped 29 of them. Only 19 of the original stolen handguns have been recovered, which means most are still floating out there somewhere. And this wasn't his first legal rodeo either. He already did 4 years in prison in 2001 for marijuana charges, then got arrested again in 2009 for selling fake Air Jordans and holding 10 pounds of weed. The Department of Justice called him a fence, someone who buys and resells stolen stuff. And in this case, that label fit like a custom jersey, just not one you'd ever want to wear. By the way, if you guys want to subscribe, I'm going to be posting every day. Thanks. Anyways, Terry Rozier. Back in March 2023, he played just over 9 minutes in a Hornets game against the Pelicans, then checked out early with a foot injury. That wouldn't normally raise eyebrows, except it happened with no warning, and a flood of bets on Terry hitting the under for points, rebounds, and assists had just come in. The game ended his season, and the betting world lit up with red flags. The sportsbooks yanked all his prop bets immediately. It wasn't just gamblers noticing either. U.S. Integrity and the NCAA's alert systems both flagged the betting activity as suspicious. The NBA did a quick review and didn't find any rule violations, but the feds weren't done. In January 2025, prosecutors from the Eastern District of New York confirmed Terry's game was part of a broader investigation tied to the Jontay Porter gambling ring. The same syndicate that helped torpedo Porter's NBA career may have placed major bets on Terry too. That group's already facing wire fraud charges, and investigators suspect their reach went further than anyone guessed. Still, Terry hasn't been charged with anything, and there's no confirmed wrongdoing. He's cooperating, staying silent on advice from lawyers, and focusing on playing. His team has stood by him, saying he's confident in clearing his name. The NBA's official stance remains that he didn't break any league rules. The only thing that's confirmed is that the game triggered betting market chaos, and Terry's early exit lined up way too neatly with some pretty hefty prop payouts. As of now, no arrests, no suspensions, and no public evidence tying Terry to anything illegal. But the feds are still watching, and the betting world's not forgetting that odd little 9-minute cameo anytime soon. Jay Vincent, his NBA career was solid, nearly 9,000 points over 9 seasons, and an NCAA title with the Magic Johnson back in college. But what followed after basketball was a train wreck dressed as a business suit. In August 2010, Vincent got hit with a federal indictment for running a nationwide job scam through something called the Foreclosure Bank Inspection Company. The pitch? Pay a fee and get certified as a foreclosure inspector. The catch? It was all fake. No contracts with big banks, no actual inspections, and no background checks. The scam pulled in money from around 20,000 people and cost victims more than $2 million. Just over a month after getting indicted, Vincent pleaded guilty to mail fraud and tax fraud. He didn't do himself any favors after that either. In July of 2011, while out on bond, prosecutors said he bounced bad checks tied to a fake basketball tryout event. Instead of fighting it, he stayed in custody voluntarily. By September 2nd, Judge Robert Yonker handed down 5.5 years in federal prison, with time to be served concurrently for both charges. Vincent was also ordered to pay over $110,000 to the IRS and potentially more to victims. He got released in March 2016 and officially completed parole 4 months later. After that, he landed a job managing a restaurant in Battle Creek, Michigan. Through it all, Magic Johnson wrote to the court asking for mercy, pointing to Vincent's remorse and his potential to change. Still, that scam left a lasting mark. Thousands believed they were stepping into real jobs. Instead, they walked straight into a carefully constructed fraud, all while one former NBA player watched the money roll in. West. Back in September 2009, he was pulled over in Maryland riding a Can-Am Spider. And let's just say he was not exactly traveling light. Police found 2 loaded handguns, one in his waistband and another strapped to his leg, plus a shotgun tucked in a guitar case slung over his back. Yeah, a literal guitar case. He got arrested and charged with multiple weapon and traffic offenses. The case didn't go federal though. It stayed in Maryland's state court system. He ended up pleading guilty and got sentenced to electronic monitoring, probation, community service, counseling, and the NBA hit him with a 10-game suspension. That was the extent of his legal trouble involving weapons, and nothing in the federal arena followed. Then came the very public fall. By January 2020, he was handcuffed on a DC highway, and later in September that year, video showed him panhandling in Dallas. Mavericks owner, Mark Cuban, stepped in, paid for rehab, and got him a place to stay. But none of this spiraled into federal charge. Despite everything, his struggles with mental health, addiction, and homelessness, his one major weapons-related case remained that bizarre traffic stop from 15 years ago. The federal government hasn't touched West's name in any weapons case since 2009, and it's now the off-season, and while you're waiting on free agency and trades, now's the perfect time to focus on your health. That's where Factor comes in. Factor is helping me stay on track with ready-to-eat meals that take just 2 minutes. No prep, no cleanup. I've been loving the garlic herb chicken and the chili lime pork chop. Super flavorful, super easy. Instead of wasting time cooking or grabbing fast food, I can stay focused on hoops and content. Factor delivers fresh, not frozen, meals straight to your door. And they actually taste amazing. They've got over 45 options every week, so you'll never get bored. Whether you're bulking, cutting, or just trying to eat better, you can choose from Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, Keto, or even vegan meals. And it's not just dinners. They've got breakfasts, lunches, snacks, and desserts too. Everything you need to power through your day. without wasting time. Get started at factormeals.com/modernjam50off and use code modernjam50off to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. That's code modernjam50off at factormeals.com/modernjam50off for 50% off plus free shipping. Thank you to Factor for the sponsor. Luca Donuch. His home in Dallas got hit on December 27, 2024, sometime between 5 and 10:30 in the evening. While he was off with the Mavericks, someone slipped in through a window in the master bedroom and walked off with about $30,000 worth of jewelry. Nobody was hurt, and the break-in was reported fast, but the thieves were long gone. Turns out, this wasn't just a random hit. It was the same guys. The FBI had already been watching a surge in athlete-targeted burglary. They put out a liaison information report just days later, warning leagues that organized rings, mostly out of South America, were planning their heists using athlete schedules, social media, and even delivery disguises. These crews don't mess around. They use signal jammers to knock out alarms, cut camera feeds, and slip through back doors and sliders without a trace. The stolen goods are always easy-to-sell stuff watches, jewelry, designer bags, and stacks of cash. Luca's break-in fit the pattern perfectly. And in February 2025, the FBI finally rolled out a full-scale operation against these transnational theft groups. They arrested several suspects tied to an East Coast crew and launched indictments out of Cincinnati, all part of a national crackdown. Investigators followed the trail through pawn shops, cell data, and team travel schedule. These guys weren't improvising. They were strategic, patient, and professional. In response, the FBI urged athletes to stop flexing location tags and luxury gear online, beef up home security, and keep a detailed inventory of their valuables. So far, Luca's case is just one of many in a growing web. No arrests yet in his particular incident, but with the Feds zoomed in, this might not stay unsolved for long. Meanwhile, athletes are having to play defense even when they're off the court. Oliver Robinson. After a short NBA run with the Spurs, he ended up in Alabama politics until it all unraveled with one of the most embarrassing bribery scandals the state has seen. In 2017, Robinson pleaded guilty to a 7-count federal indictment that included conspiracy, bribery, honest services, wire fraud, and tax evasion. The whole thing revolved around blocking the expansion of a toxic Superfund site. Robinson took around $360,000 through his nonprofit from a law firm and a coal company executive, all to push back against the EPA's cleanup plans in North Birmingham. He used his political weight to fight the expansion publicly, all while hiding the cash flow like a magician doing cheap tricks. And he didn't just stop at environmental meddling. He also admitted to blowing nearly $18,000 in campaign contributions on himself and ducking taxes on income from 2015. He got sentenced in September 2018 to 33 months in federal prison, plus 3 years of supervised release. The judge also hit him with over $169,000 in restitution and nearly $391,000 in forfeit. That sentence could have been worse, but Robinson gave prosecutors enough info to help nail his co-conspirators, which shaved some time off his stay. So yeah, former legislator, former NBA guard, and a very current cautionary tale. He took money that was supposed to support cleanup and public trust and used it to protect private profits, all while pretending to fight for his constituents. It was textbook fraud, dressed up as political service, and the feds saw right through the act. Rex Chapman. In March of 1993, his name got dragged into something out of a crime drama, except it was real and the threat was very personal. The guy behind it was Lewis Billups, a former NFL player with a violent past and a short temper, who was dating Rex's sister Jenny. When things got rocky, Billups didn't just argue. He picked up the phone and made threats that went straight to the FBI's radar. Billups called Jenny from Orlando and made it crystal clear that Rex was the target. He said things like, "You got your brother's knees in your hands," and promised that Rex would never play basketball again. That wasn't an empty rant. He was threatening to end Chapman's career, physically. The feds recorded the calls, launched a case, and were waiting when Billups flew to Lexington to meet Jenny. They arrested him at the airport before he could get anywhere near her, or Rex. Billups got charged with interstate threats, and the court didn't hesitate. His bail was denied because of a long history of violence, including domestic assault and firearm charges. In June of that year, he pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 12 months in federal prison, 3 years of supervised release, and fined $10,000. Rex never publicly commented much, but the message was obvious. His career, safety, and family had been put in real danger, and all over something he didn't even cause. Just 5 days after Billups finished his sentence, he died in a high-speed crash. It was a sudden ending to a twisted story that nearly took one NBA player's career and turned it into a headline about violence instead of basketball. Grant Gondresick. He was caught up in one of the biggest NBA drug scandals of the 80s, but his role ended up being less about drugs and more about keeping someone else from talking. In April of 1987, a Maricopa County grand jury hit him and two other Phoenix Suns players with indictments linked to a major cocaine and marijuana investigation. Walter Davis, the Suns' all-star at the time, testified in front of the grand jury and named names, including Gondresick's. But here's where it got weird. The drug charges didn't stick. By September 2nd, Gondresick agreed to a plea deal that dropped all the drug-related counts. Instead, he pleaded guilty to witness tampering, specifically for advising teammate William Bedford not to testify. His punishment? A $100 fine and 3 years of probation. That was it. No jail, no felony conviction, and no league suspension. He tried to get back into the NBA after that. The Suns brought him to camp later that year, but cut him before the season. He resurfaced with the Clippers in 1988, and by January of 1989, he voluntarily checked himself into a substance abuse clinic. That wasn't court-ordered. It was a personal decision while trying to keep his career afloat. Despite being named in a major drug sweep, Gondresick never admitted to using, possessing, or distributing drugs. The case never went federal either. It stayed at the state level in Arizona. The plea was purely about trying to silence a witness, which didn't exactly boost his image, but it saved him from something much worse. Marvin "Bad News" Barnes. He had the talent, the stats, the awards, ABA Rookie of the Year, multiple All-Star nods, and a place on the league's all-time team. But behind the flashy game was a long, winding rap sheet that tracked his career almost as closely as his points and rebounds. It started early. In high school, he tried to rob a bus with a gang, wearing his championship jacket with his school name stitched on it. That one went through juvenile court. Then at Providence College, things got even more intense. He assaulted a teammate with a tire iron, pled guilty, paid $10,000, and landed on probation. By the time he was a pro, the trouble didn't slow down. In October of 1976, Detroit Airport security found a .38 caliber pistol and bullets in his luggage, since he was already on probation from the tire iron incident. This violation earned him 152 days in jail back in Rhode Island. After the NBA, it only got worse. Barnes was arrested multiple times for burglarizing locked cars, trespassing, and possessing narcotics. In 1989, he was caught stealing videotapes and lingerie from a San Diego adult bookstore. That one ended in a conviction. He even admitted he was homeless for a stretch in the early 80s, living on the street and deep in addiction. Still, toward the end, he tried to pull things together. He went back to Providence, spoke with kids, and warned them not to follow his path. But the chaos of his choices always hovered. Barnes died in 2014 at 62. A gifted player whose nickname, Bad News, ended up being way too accurate. His legal record may have stayed mostly state level, but his legacy was always tangled in what could have been. Bill Spivey. He was a dominant 7-footer at Kentucky, first-team All-American, and a key part of their 1951 national title run. But his career came crashing down when his name surfaced in one of the biggest scandals in college basketball history, the 1951 point-shaving investigation. That scandal rocked programs from coast to coast, starting with CCNY and rolling through other schools, including Kentucky. Several Wildcats admitted to taking bribes, and Spivey's name came up. But he did something different. He denied everything. He testified before a New York grand jury and swore he never accepted money. Then in April 1952, he got indicted, not for fixing games, but for perjury. Prosecutors said he lied under oath about taking a $1,000 bribe. When he went to trial in 1953, the jury couldn't agree. 9 voted to acquit, 3 held out. That deadlock meant the case ended without a conviction, and the charges were eventually dismissed. He never admitted guilt. He never got convicted. But it didn't matter. Kentucky banned him from the team in 1952, and NBA President Maurice Podoloff dropped the hammer. Spivey was banned for life from the league, even though he'd never played a single game in it. So Spivey stood alone, the only major figure in the case who went to trial, the only one who fought the charges all the way, and still wound up locked out of the pros. The NBA's punishment wasn't tied to a conviction, it was just policy. He was never legally found guilty of anything, but his basketball career never recovered. All that talent, wiped away by a scandal he swore he had nothing to do with. Keon Dueling. Once a steady hand in NBA backcourts, and later an assistant coach, he found himself on the wrong side of a federal indictment tied to a massive healthcare fraud scheme. From 2017 through 2021, Dueling and over a dozen other former NBA players worked with corrupt medical professionals to submit fake invoices for services that never happened. Dueling wasn't just along for the ride. He helped expand the whole thing. He recruited players, connected them with crooked dentists and doctors, and even coached them on how to submit bogus claims. He personally collected about $363,000 through fake reimbursements. On top of that, he helped others file nearly $200,000 in fraudulent claims. At one point, he texted the dentist in the scheme saying, "Let's make this thing grow, sir, and get me the whole NBA." Real mastermind energy. The whole thing blew up in October 2021 when the feds charged 18 former players. Dueling was added to the indictment in April 2022 while he was working as a player development coach with the Utah Jazz. By February of the following year, he pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit healthcare fraud and wire fraud. He was sentenced to 30 months in prison, along with restitution and forfeiture. It wasn't just a blip. This was one of the largest player-involved frauds in league history, draining up to $5 million from the NBA's benefit fund. Dueling's name went from respected vet to convicted fraudster in under 2 years. He tried to get the whole NBA and instead ended up with a federal sentence and a lifetime membership in a very different kind of club. Richard Dumas, once a promising talent with the Phoenix Suns, his post-NBA path took a nosedive into legal trouble. On December 19, 2013, U.S. Marshals arrested him on a federal warrant in Arizona. He was charged with 8 felony counts of organized retail theft. The accusations? While working for a janitorial company at Luke Air Force Base, he allegedly stole nearly $800 worth of cigarettes, alcohol, food, DVDs, and even shoes. The surveillance footage backed up the timeline. Authorities said the thefts took place between September and October of 2012. Initially, Dumas pleaded not guilty on December 28th, but almost exactly a year later, he reversed course. On December 11th, 2014, he pleaded guilty to theft-related charges. Sentencing came down on January 20th, 2015. Instead of prison, Judge Sam Myers handed Dumas 3 years of probation as part of a plea agreement. The 8 felony counts were effectively sidelined. No incarceration, no fines reported, just probation and a permanent dent in what was left of his public reputation. So despite the federal warrant stamp, this case didn't end in a cell. It ended with supervision and another layer to Dumas' long list of post-career missteps. A once dominant forward, now remembered for walking out of a base store with stolen sneakers and a criminal record instead of another highlight reel. Bobby Portis. On November 2nd, 2024, while the Bucks were playing the Cavaliers, his home in River Hills, Wisconsin, was being looted. Thieves smashed a window, got into his master bedroom, and took off with a safe stuffed with jewelry, designer bags, watches, and stacks of cash. Total loss? Somewhere between $1.4 and $1.5 million. Not exactly spare change. It turned out Portis was one of several pro athletes targeted by a Chilean burglary ring. The FBI connected the dots in early 2025, tying the crew the same as Morant. These guys weren't freelancing. They tracked travel schedules, watched social media, and made sure homes were empty before moving in. Their tactics were methodical. They'd disable security systems, jam Wi-Fi, and sometimes disguise themselves as delivery workers. They used burner phones, fake IDs, and rental cars to move around. Incredibly, some even posted selfies with the stolen loot, which helped federal agents build their case. In February, 7 Chilean nationals were indicted on federal conspiracy charges for transporting stolen property across state lines, each facing up to 10 years if convicted. Investigators also traced fencing operations through pawn shops, including several in New York's Diamond District. Portis responded fast, putting up a $40,000 reward for anyone who could help recover his stolen item. Meanwhile, the FBI and NBA started warning teams to lock things down. Literally, players were urged to upgrade home security, keep quiet on social media, and stash valuables in hidden safes. This wasn't just a robbery, it was a coordinated assault on high-profile athletes' homes. In Portis' case was one of the biggest hits in the ring's multi-state spree. Jack Molenus. He was the 3rd overall pick in the 1953 draft, played just 32 games with the Fort Wayne Pistons, and made the All-Star roster. Then the NBA slammed the door on him, permanent. Why? Because he was caught betting on Pistons games, including his own. In 1954, the league banned him for life, not just from playing, but from even showing up in an arena. But Molenus wasn't done wrecking basketball. Between 1957 In 1961, he became the ringleader of one of the biggest college point-shaving schemes in history. Nearly 50 players from 27 colleges were involved. Molenus arranged bribes, manipulated outcomes, and handed gamblers insider access to student athletes. The impact on NCAA basketball was massive. This wasn't small-time stuff. It was a national web of corruption. In 1963, the feds finally nailed him. He was convicted of conspiracy and bribery tied to the scheme and sentenced to 10 to 15 years in federal prison. He served about 5, then got paroled in 1968. After prison, Molenus moved to Los Angeles and drifted into the sleazy world of fur trading and pornography. He stayed close to trouble, and trouble eventually found him. On August 3rd, 1975, he was shot dead outside his California home. The hit had all the fingerprints of organized crime. So yeah, Molenus went from NBA All-Star to NCAA saboteur to convicted felon to murder victim, all before turning 50. No other player in league history torched their career, reputation, and life quite like he did. From a rising star to a cautionary tale, he made sure his name was etched into the history books for all the wrong reasons. Henry James. He played in both the NBA and the CBA during the 90s, even winning a CBA title and playoff MVP with Sioux Falls in 1996. But by 2006, his career highlight reel was overshadowed by a federal indictment and a 5-year prison sentence. It started with 2 drug deals in Fort Wayne, Indiana. On August 30th and again on September 7th, James sold crack cocaine to an undercover officer, totaling between $400 and $750 worth. During the second deal, he had 6 of his children in the car with him. The youngest was just 3 months old. He was indicted on 2 federal counts of distributing crack, but he struck a plea deal. 1 count was dropped, and he pleaded guilty to the other. On May 24th, 2007, he was sentenced to 5 years in federal prison. That matched the mandatory minimum under the federal guidelines for crack distribution at the time. James went from pro athlete to convict in less than a decade, and the case stood out, not just because of who he was, but because of how low he had fallen. Selling drugs with young kids in the car while under surveillance. It wasn't just reckless, it was tragic. The federal system didn't go easy on him. 5 years, no parole, and no second chances in court. So while his basketball resume had some real accolades, his legacy got stamped with a federal case number, a championship ring in one hand, a 5-year sentence in the other. That's how Henry James's post-NBA chapter ended. Chuck Pson. He went from NBA Rookie of the Year to Auburn Associate Head Coach, and then straight into the heart of a federal bribery scandal. On September 26, 2017, he was indicted as part of a sweeping FBI investigation into corruption in college basketball. Prosecutors hit him with 6 felony counts, including bribery, conspiracy, and wire fraud. The accusation? That he took money to steer his players toward a particular financial advisor. He didn't just take a few bucks either. According to the Department of Justice, Pson pocketed at least $91,500 in bribes. In return, he helped connect the advisor, who turned out to be an FBI informant with Auburn players and their families. Pson even scheduled the meetings, helping build what prosecutors described as a pay-to-play recruitment channel, hidden inside a Division I program. By March of 2019, he pleaded guilty to 1 count of conspiracy to commit bribery. The plea deal dropped the other 5 charges, but he still had to forfeit the full $91,500 he received. When sentencing came down in July, the judge gave him 2 years of probation and 200 hours of community service. No prison time. The court credited his charity work and time served and decided jail wouldn't help anyone. Auburn fired him in November of 2017, and the NCAA slapped him with a 10-year show cause penalty, effectively blacklisting him from college coaching for a decade. The case sent shockwaves through the sport and helped drive reforms across the recruiting landscape. And just like that, Chuck Pson went from sideline leader to a key figure in one of college basketball's biggest scandals, Tai Jerome. His Los Angeles house was broken into on January 17th while he was on the road with Cleveland. The entry method? Old-fashioned chaos. The glass window was shattered, and whoever did it ran off fast. There's been no official list of what's missing, which either means it's top secret or someone's still figuring it out. LAPD's on the case, and Jerome's team is expected to follow up with a full list of stolen items. But this isn't just about Jerome. Guess who all the evidence led to? The same as Portis and Luca. But Jerome's break-in hasn't been officially tied to these international rings, but the pattern is eerily similar, right down to the timing, method, and the complete lack of security system response. The investigation's still going, And now law enforcement is getting more coordinated with leagues to deal with it. This isn't just some trend, it's a serious issue that keeps showing up every time an athlete hits the road. Kenny Williams, back on July 6th of 2000, he got hit with a federal indictment in the Eastern District of North Carolina for skipping out on court-ordered child support. That's a charge under federal law. And by August 23rd, he had already pleaded guilty. Fast forward to August 20th of 2013, and the judge sentenced him to 9 months in federal prison, plus 1 year of supervised release. Oh, and he had to cough up $661,277 in restitution. The payments he skipped weren't small. During his time with Indiana, he was ordered to pay $2,500 a month, which got bumped up to $3,750 after his third child was born in 1995. And it wasn't like he couldn't afford it. In 1994, he made $750,000. And even after heading overseas, he was bringing in $90,000 to $180,000 a year. Still, he didn't pay, and his kids ended up relying on public assistance. Then came the no-show in July 2001. He skipped out on sentencing and disappeared overseas. That move turned him into a fugitive, and he stayed off the radar until March 11th of 2013, when U.S. Marshals finally brought him in. This wasn't just about unpaid bills. The law took it seriously. He was treated as a criminal under federal code, not just a guy with overdue payments. The court made an example out of him with that massive restitution and prison time. The whole saga lasted over a decade, showing how long the government will chase someone if they try to run from responsibilities like that. If you enjoyed this, I'm going to be posting a lot here. I would greatly appreciate it if you could subscribe. Thanks for watching.